Chapter 24. Their mad dash through the forest had Jake's wound gushing with blood again. With Jesse's help, he concentrated on putting one foot in front of the other. Don't think about killing a man. Don't think about the pain. Definitely don't think about the girl. Jesus fuck. Don't think about the girl. Having closed his eyes tightly in a moment of anguish, he stumbled over a fallen branch. And it was only that his arm was slung over Jesse's shoulder that he didn't sprawl into the leaf litter on the ground. "Come on, we're almost there," Jesse encouraged, huffing with exertion. There was no sign they were being chased. Not that it slowed their escape. Jake could have wept when the red-roofed house came into view. His lungs were burning and the pain in his side was beyond anything he could imagine. Abandoning caution as they approached, Jesse called out a hopeful greeting that was met with silence. There wasn't so much as a twitch of the curtain in the kitchen window. "Think anyone's home?" Jesse asked. "Maybe, maybe not," Jake answered. "Probably smart to hide from two strange men. Wonder if they'll appear when we start their pickup. I think we should knock. Seems the polite thing to do. And I'd kill for some water." Standing at the back door, Jesse knocked and they waited, straining to hear anything from within. Jake swiped at drops of his blood from the sidewalk with his boot. After a minute of silence, Jake tried the doorknob. Locked. "It's not worth breaking in just for a glass of water. I can use that garden hose, and then let's get the fuck out of here," he muttered, already making his way over. They drank greedily, water running down their chins. "Want to clean up some?" Jesse asked, eyeing Jake's blood-caked clothing. "Nah, I don't want a wet shirt. It's damn cold enough as it is." As if to emphasize his point, a bitter gust of wind swirled orange leaves around their legs. "So if there's no key, you can hotwire the pickup, right?" "Learned how in the first week of my apprenticeship," Jake confirmed. "Handy skill?" "Handy enough," Jake said, swinging open the door to the vehicle and smiling when he saw the keychain dangling from the ignition. "Speaking of handy skills, you don't know how to pick a lock by any chance, do you?" Jesse looked at him in confusion. "Never mind. You okay to drive?" Loath to admit to the woozy swimming of his head, Jake made his way to the passenger door, absently noting the trail of blood his supporting hand was leaving on the side of the truck. Hauling himself inside, he closed the door and collapsed back into the seat. "You can follow the road signs to Sanford, right?" "Sure. You okay?" Concern was evident in Jesse's voice, but Jake had closed his eyes. Adrenaline was leaching from his ravaged body, and he didn't have the strength to keep them open. He felt the truck rumble to life, and then nothing. Jesse's hand shaking Jake's shoulder had him jerking back to consciousness, a burst of anxiety spiking his blood. The image of the girl, her eyes pleading, flashed in his mind. "They don't look friendly," Jesse said, and slowed as they approached the blockade to Sanford, cautiously eyeing the armed men guarding it. "Sure they won't shoot first and ask questions later?" "Just pull up here and let them come to us," Jake said. "This isn't the truck I left in, so they won't know who it is. We'll be fine once they realize. I hope like hell they won't shoot first and ask questions later." "Jake," called Buddy, coming around to the passenger window and looking in with concern. "We've been trying to get you on the radio for hours. Where are Rob and Lee?" He gestured at Jesse with his rifle. "And who's this?" "He's a friend, and he's safe. Let us through. He has to quarantine." Buddy wasn't convincing in his role of authority. "Fuck off, Buddy. He's safe, and I need medical help." "You been shot?" Buddy asked. "It's not bad. Let us through," he repeated. "Rob and Lee?" "Dead." Jake held the other man's stare until he backed away, waving at the men at the blockade to allow them passage. "I'll let Mayor Townsend know you're back," Buddy called out. Jake ignored him. "Where to?" Jesse asked. "My sister's place." "Those men at the checkpoint are radioing ahead. Don't they expect you to report in?" "I need to get stitched up and report to my girl." Jesse didn't hide his smirk. "Sure thing, boss. Point the way." An involuntary jumpiness had Jake's foot bouncing, a fierce need to see Mackenzie coursing through him. Now that they were so close, he couldn't contain his eagerness. The rumble of the truck was loud in the suburban street as they coasted to a stop in front of Chloe's driveway. Before Jesse had turned off the ignition, the front door to the house was flung open, Chloe and Mackenzie spilling out. Fumbling with the door handle, Jake tried to jump out to greet them, but staggered. "Jake, what happened?" Chloe cried, reaching him first and taking in the carnage of his clothing, her expression horrified. "Rach, where's Rachel? We need her!" Without sparing his sister more than a cursory glance, his gaze landed on Mackenzie, who'd slowed her sprint toward him and was now standing back, eyes wide and unblinking. He could see the fear and uncertainty all over her face, and it killed him. "I'm okay," he said, walking toward her with his hand outstretched, as though she were a wild fawn that could startle and flee. "God, Jake!" Her trembling palm covered her mouth, and she took a faltering step backward. Noticing the dried blood on his outstretched hand, he looked down at himself, conceding he should have taken Jesse up on his suggestion to get clean before they got in the truck. He looked worse than he felt, which was saying something because he felt like shit. Chloe pushed between them, stopping him from hauling Mackenzie into his arms. "You're not okay. You've got blood all over you," Chloe shrieked, frantically patting him down to find the source of his injury. Catching Mackenzie's gaze over Chloe's shoulder, he willed her to come forward and claim him. Now, more than ever before, he didn't want to play the charade of friends. He wanted her enfolded in his embrace. He wanted to soothe the wild look from her eyes and kiss all the concern from her furrowed brow. Most of all, he needed her to acknowledge the intense desperation they felt toward each other, to prove it was real. They were real. Instead, Mac stood mute, hugging her torso, gnawing on her bottom lip. "Let me look at you," demanded Rachel, pulling Chloe away and running practiced eyes over him. "What happened?" "I got shot. It went through my side," he said, pulling his shirt up to expose the makeshift bandages covering the wound. No one else noticed that Mackenzie choked on a sob. But for him, everything else was background noise. Every sense he possessed strained toward her. "No way, Romeo," Rachel hissed at him beneath her breath. "I need you inside so I can look at this." She glanced at Chloe. "Get your first aid kit for me. And please tell me it contains Dermabond because he's not going to like me stitching this up." Behind Chloe's retreating form, Jake captured Mackenzie's hand, pulling her against him as they moved into the house, forgetting entirely about his traveling companion. Hi?" Jesse had exited the vehicle and was standing awkwardly on the curb. "Who the hell is that?" Chloe asked, stopping in her tracks and looking over her shoulder. "Shit, sorry." "This is Jesse," said Jake, turning back around to wave his new friend forward, acutely aware that Mackenzie had again put distance between them. "Jesse, this is my sister Chloe." "Well, come on, don't just stand there," she chided him. "Are you hurt too?" "No, ma'am." "Don't ma'am me." She huffed, waiting for him to reach her side before marching him after the others into the house. In the kitchen, Rachel instructed Jake to lie down on the counter so she could inspect the wound, muttering to herself as she ran hot water, and Chloe returned with the first aid kit. "What can I do?" Mackenzie asked. "Cross your fingers that this kit has skin glue," Rachel said, rummaging through the medical box. "Otherwise, this is going to hurt like a bitch." "So reassuring," he quipped dryly. "You're the one stupid enough to get shot." "Not the only stupid thing you've been doing lately," Chloe muttered, glancing darkly between him and Mackenzie. Mackenzie visibly tensed. So, Chloe knew about them, and apparently wasn't happy about it. "Not the time or the place, sis," he said. "Who shot you?" Mackenzie asked, her lashes heavy with unshed tears. Jake grimaced as Rachel began cleaning his wound, so Jesse answered for him, explaining about the motorcycle gang and how Rob and Lee were dead. Mackenzie and Rachel traded shocked glances. "I've never heard of an MC in Dutton," Chloe commented, finally looking away from Jake's hand clasping Mackenzie's. "They're not locals," Jesse said. "They arrived about a week ago and have taken over the town. It's bad. They've killed most of the surviving locals and have ransacked everything." Jesse accepted a glass of water from Chloe and continued. "We found a barn to hide out in, but with both Jake and Lee shot, we didn't have a hope of outrunning them." Jesse nodded toward Jake's wound. I bandaged them both up as best I could, but we lost Lee." He paused. "And then one of the gang members brought in a girl, and we couldn't just do nothing." "What do you mean, brought in a girl?" Mackenzie asked, her eyes flicking between Jake and Jesse anxiously. "A captive," Jake confirmed, concentrating on holding still as Rachel pulled the skin around his wound together and applied the skin glue. "Jesus, Rach, this hurts more than it does in the movies. Aren't you meant to be plying me with alcohol to numb the pain?" "Suck it up," she retorted. "So you saved this chick?" Jake closed his eyes so he didn't have to see Mackenzie's face when he shook his head. "We created a diversion and tried to rescue her, but these guys—" Jesse drew in a pained breath. "They're psychopaths. They, shot her before we could get her away." "Have you been to town hall?" Mackenzie asked, wincing on Jake's behalf as Rachel poured antiseptic over her handiwork and then turned him on his side to attend to the exit wound. "Came straight here," Jake said. "Jim and the others got back okay?" "Yes, but Townsend threatened to throw Jim and his family out of the town if he didn't fall into line." "Fall into line?" Jake lifted his head from his bent elbow, ignoring the agonizing throb in his side. "That sounds extreme. Are you sure you didn't misunderstand?" "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Mackenzie said firmly, pulling away from him. "He literally said he'd throw them out of town if they didn't follow the rules." "I know the rules might seem severe, but they're for our protection," he insisted. "He's turned Sanford into a dictatorship," Mackenzie exclaimed. "And he isn't going to give up his power willingly," Chloe muttered. "We've got a meeting planned at the distillery in a couple of hours to work out how we're going to handle it." "Not quite the safe haven I promised you, huh?" Jake addressed Jesse. "Better than Dutton." "Jake, do those motorcycle guys know about Sanford? Know where you're from?" Mackenzie asked. The worry etched on her features caused his stomach to clench. The front door slammed and Jake jerked, causing Rachel to curse. "Who is it?" Chloe called. "Who do you think?" asked Kat, coming into the kitchen with her nose crinkled in confusion. "Whoa, what the hell's going on in here?" Her eyes bounced from one to the other, stopping on Jake's prone form. "Jakey, when did you get back? What's happened?" "Long story," he grunted. "You about finished, Rach?" "Not my best, but not bad considering what I had to work with," she responded, standing back. "And you'll live. I hope you brought back some antibiotics from the drugstore." "Where have you been, Kat?" Mackenzie stood firm as Kat tried to push her away from Jake's side to better see. Jake sat up with a groan and, ignoring Chloe, pulled Mackenzie to stand with her back between his knees. He was beyond relieved to feel her body relax into his as he wrapped his arms around her, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I've just come from Main Street. Townsend has lost his shit." "Hey, who are you?" She jabbed a finger in Jesse's direction. "I leave for a couple of hours and we adopt a stray. Lucky you're cute." Jake chuckled as Jesse noticeably reddened, shifting from foot to foot. "I'm Jesse." "Cat," she responded, losing interest quickly. So anyway, they caught a couple of teenagers scavenging toilet paper from the evac zone and then selling it. Stupid kids got caught because they tried to sell some to Jeffries. She shrugged, rolling her eyes. And Townsend has accused them of looting and, get this, tied them to stakes as punishment. Mackenzie cocked her head. "Are you being dramatic? Or did that really happen?" "Swear to God. It's Lucas Hernandez and that other kid who works at the Dairy Queen, Jimmy Fowler. Townsend said they'd serve as a lesson to the town, and he's leaving them there for 24 hours.
"He can't do that," Rachel blazed.
Kat raised her eyebrows. "He can if he's got men standing guard with guns." Mackenzie was vibrating in his arms, and Jake immediately assumed it was with terror. He tugged her tighter against him. "We need guns," Mackenzie stated, pulling away from him so she could turn and look at everyone. Not terrified, furious. "Now who's being extreme?" he asked. "Since when do you want to carry?" "Since Grams disappeared," Mackenzie replied, tipping her chin at Chloe. "What happened to Grams?" he growled, facing his sister. "That's just it, we don't know," Chloe snapped, and then softened when she registered his anguish. Why hadn't he checked in with Grams before he'd left on the raid? "What do you know?" "Rach and I went back, but just like before, it was locked up and no one answered our knocking. So we found a side door unlocked and got in, but no one was there. It was empty. And then Tom Brenner caught us coming out and said we were trespassing, and if we didn't shut up about the old people, we'd wish we had," added Rachel. "What the fuck?" he breathed out. "And that's why I want a gun," Mackenzie said. "We need to make a list of everyone we think would have firearms and whether they're here in town with us. If they're not, we need to know where they live." "Lived," Rachel corrected quietly. "But everyone already handed in their weapons when this first happened." "Get real, Rach. This is the United States. The only people who handed in weapons are the ones who already have a second or third one tucked away," Mackenzie countered. "We meet with Jim in 2 hours. By the end of today, we should all be armed."